could talk. He is coming in.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Hey, GK, how are you?
Evening, yeah. This is unusual for me to be. I'm sorry I'm a little late this evening.
You're all good. We are just starting. We were waiting for you. We knew you were coming.
We could feel it. We could just feel it.
Feel it.
In your bones.
GK, have you read the book The Four Agreements?
You know, it's real famous, GK. I mean, it's been around for a while.
Yeah, have you read that book before or heard it?
I guess he doesn't hear us.
Okay, because I wanted my question to be around that because I know I told you like I just reread it again.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. I'm gonna
Can
pull
you
it
hear
up.
us? Can you hear us, Jeff? She just asked you a question. Have you read the Four Agreements? Okay.
He said no.
Great book. Yeah, he shook his head and said no. It's a great book.
All right, so I will give a quick overview of what they are. And I have I just found something that could go over it. And if you hadn't read it yet, like again, it is a really good book and it's a really quick book to read. And it just helps with you as you go through life, to take some of the burden off of you, some of the mental burden.
Would you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Would you in the chat give me a link to that, and if I'll update.
Oh, yes. Okay, because Spotify has it for free right now. So you can listen to it.
Wonderful. I'd like to hear it again. I don't have time to sit down and read it, but I can certainly listen while I'm washing clothes, cleaning house, doing dishes, cooking. So
Yes.
please send the link.
It's a good hour. I think they have it for an hour and 4 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Gotta find this actual link.
Yeah, it's amongst other things that we're doing these days. People were probably tripping out a little bit today. I was riding down the road in a shuttle bus while I was trying to conduct a meeting with earbuds. That's not how I like to do things, but
That's the movement for today, though. That's what's going on in today's world.
Okay, I just got the link now. I'm about to send it to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm gonna close the chat and come back. It's not coming up on mine. There it went.
It's just I put it in there. Yep. All right, so let me share my screen and we can kind of read it together. All right, can you kind of see that?
Yes.
All right, so the four agreements, and I'll read it along with you guys. The first one is to be impeccable with your word, speak with integrity, say only what you mean, avoid using words to speak against yourself or to gossip about others, use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. The second one is don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim to their needless suffering. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. And then the last agreement is to do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you're healthy as opposed to when you're sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. And I know that you, Ms. Paulette, you say that all the time, like you did the best that you could do at that time with what you had and what you thought. So like that's important. So my question is, as we do our check-in, I want to know your number and color as always, but I want to know what your favorite agreement is out of the four. And I will start off and I will give you a reason why. My number and color, I'm going to be like a citrus orange for my color, but my number, I'm feeling like an 8 today. I had a really good time with my sister. We just went to a farmer's market and we got like some sweets and some coffee. And my favorite one, if I had to choose any right now, is just gonna be to be impeccable with your word. As somebody just operating in life in this human experience, I try not to hurt people's feelings as much as possible. And that's not something that you can control as much as you can. Even though you say something and it could be out of love, you know, that's always my intention is out of love. You can still hurt somebody's feelings, and I'm always willing to, you know, accept that the things that I've said could have hurt someone and apologize for how I made them feel. But I always like to stand on what I had said. You know, my truth was still my truth. So that's my favorite right now. And I want to pass it to you, Miss Paulette.
All right. You know, I'm a yellow 10. You know that, don't you? It's not that I'm unwavering. It's not that I'm the same old, same old. It's just that the sun is up there every day. Now, when I wake up in the morning, the sun decided to just, you know, go someplace else in the middle of our solar system. Well, then I can't be a yellow anymore. And I'm a 10. I won't be a 10 tomorrow if I wake up hurting. But today, sure, you just don't know what it means to wake up where, oh, I'm a 10 on that day. I'm a 10. And my favorite one is always do your best. Because as you said, you can be impeccable with your word all you want to. And then you still see somebody get their lips stuck out because they took personally an insult to themselves instead of what they were doing. And the assumptions like, what was that? It's like, it's like, I don't want to say the ugly word. It's like special place in your body. Everybody got one. But for me, it's always do your best because that's what you have control over. That is what you have. And it don't mean you're 100% every day because I'm not. But it means that when you make a mistake, you have learned a lesson because you did your best. You didn't just throw something on the page. You didn't just make a stab at the emails. You didn't just try to throw something together to feed people. It was your very best. It might not have turned out like you thought it should have, but do your best for me is always under my control, and it keeps me from having those awful feelings of disappointment. So, and I'll pass it to you, Jeff.
Wow. You know, I share a lot of that with Miss Fair about doing your best, but that's not my place where I'm learning. When I was a furniture tech, I didn't see any difference between being a sales rep and being a furniture tech, where it's art, it's craft, you do your best, and music. Today, it's the same thing. You're there, you train, you do your best, and I considered it all an art, a craft, and a avocation, you know. And I don't think I'll ever be Miss Fair. I wish I could just clone her and go and inject her into the world, but it's not going to ever happen. And today, may I share this? This has been a very, very.
Recording this, so are you okay with like somebody?
I'm not mentioning any names.
Okay, cool.
And nothing that personal.
Okay.
I didn't even. I shared this on Facebook, as a matter of fact. But I went all the way across town. I live way, way across town. I'm on the southwest side of Indianapolis, and we drove to a location where this person was supposed to rehearse. I was supposed to be auditioned, and I've been auditioning other people, and all of us showed, and all of us did what we were supposed to do. And they were ready to go to Hollywood. They were like the next big production company in Indianapolis. I get there, and there's a studio next door. I know the owner of the studio. And he comes out and tells me, there's nobody in there. I'm knocking on the door. He's leaving work for the day. I don't ever want to be that person. I don't want to be someone who's strung someone else along and run them down a long pathway to nowhere. So, I can kind of see some of the things Miss Ferris used to say, like, don't be a sissy. Uh, I mean, really, it's been a several. I'm only giving you guys the tip of the iceberg. It's been quite an education here in Indy.
So does that mean that you're more on the be impeccable with your word thing because you feel like that person?
Yes, I've always given things my best effort. I do try to always keep my word, but as you said, words can hurt, and the truth in love, that's my goal, from my faith. But I don't always meet that goal. I wish I did. I'm still, I don't know if I will be able to accomplish that in my lifetime.
No, but that's where, the cool thing about this book, and as you listen to it, which I really hope that you do, is that it all does boil down to always doing your best. Now, all of these 4 agreements in practice will offer you more peace in your life. And there will be days when you can do all 4. And then there are some days when you can only focus on one, and that is just doing your best. And, let's say that you had a bad day, your body's aching, your family is going through turmoil, and you're just having a tough time at it. But you woke up and you still tried at life and you did your best, They all align with each other. So, you can focus on one. I definitely keep some in mind as I go along, but they all correlate.
Right.
Cool thing about it. All right, so today's training is going to be over creating relationships with journalists in order to push forward whatever you have going on. So it could be for an organization, it could be as an individual. What's important to you, and it could be your own business, your music, or it can be just something that's going on in the world that you feel like people should know about. So guys, keep that in mind as we watch this one. This one I'm not fully conducting myself. We're going to be watching a video, but you will have the ability to ask me questions at the end.
This is a workshop that you've been in, so you've already seen it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, guys.
I cannot hear a thing.
Yeah, she didn't have it up yet.
Oh, okay.
We'll try and get through this. But
Can you hear now?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for coming today. So let's just get rolling.
We can't see something
One
though.
question, we're now deeply in the age of social media. Most people get a lot of their news from social media. So does the press even matter anymore? And the answer is yes. Like, you still need to work with press and journalists. Some really great things about it. It's built-in audience reach. So let's say you create something, put it on your social media channels, but if you don't have a lot of followers, then maybe you don't have the biggest audience reach. Where instead, if you had a story in your local paper, then automatically, anyone who reads they'll see your story. So it's a great way to, make sure that you're reaching a lot of people with your content, and especially the people that you want to be reaching. It helps to kind of give a certain degree of authority or stature to your campaign work. Being able to share, a major op-ed or a major news piece or coverage of your campaigns That'll really help with your campaigns, both like with your targets, with funders and things like that. And then getting in great papers also helps you reach your target. With campaign work, there's always that target, who is the decision maker that you're trying to reach? So think about, if you're trying to reach Governor Newsom in California, I'm sure that his staff every day are reading through, specific newspapers to kind of get a sense of what's going on. And so, getting the placements in the right papers will again help you reach your target. So there's lots of good things about getting press coverage. It's super helpful. So of course, is just one part of the communications equations, because we've had trainings on social media and everything, but it still really matters in this day and age. So what are we covering today? So press training could usually span 3 days, to do a really in-depth training on working with press and journalists could really take a while, but we're going to try and fit some really key things into this next hour. First things what's really important is to kind of get in the head of the journalists. How do they think? And understanding how they think about what makes a good story will then help you better be able to engage with them. So we're going to go through just some simple tips on, what is a journalist looking for in a good story. Then we're going to walk through media materials and strategy. Press releases, media advisories, op-eds. What's the difference between all these different tools and tactics, and when do you employ them? So we'll kind of walk through that, so that way you have a good sense. Here's when I need to send out my press release. Here's when I do a letter to editor. We'll walk through all those different strategies. And then we'll wrap up with some good next steps. So if you're ready to really dive into this work with your organization, have some next steps for some big projects that you could really start rolling with. So that's what we got planned for today. But first thing, I want to do a quick poll. How do you feel working with journalists and getting press coverage? So we have one, pretty confident. Maybe you've worked with a lot of press before. You have good relationships. You're like, I got this, I'm good. Number two, you have some experience, but you're maybe still a little uneasy a bit. Three is you're very unsure and nervous. You haven't really done any of this work before. And number four is you're kind of indifferent, you don't really have many feelings on it. So if folks want to go into the chat and then just put in the chat which number 1, 2, 3, 4 you feel like you are when it comes to working with press. Seeing some 2s. Okay. No 1s and 3s, which is interesting. Anyone else want to chime in? Okay, so folks have some experience, but it's still it always kind of changes. Awesome. So I think a lot of us are kind of in that 2, 3, 4 area, which is totally fine. Usually what happens, especially at smaller orgs, is if you only have one comms person and you're responsible for digital, website, social media, and comm stuff, it's hard to be a Swiss Army knife in all things. So we're all learning here. Okay, awesome. So there you go. Here's where you're going to be talking about too. All right, my cough's really acting up today. But it really helps to, again, get into the head of a journalist and how they think. So my question for you is to think about, why does someone even become a journalist versus maybe going down government job or a nonprofit job or a business job? Why do you think someone becomes a journalist? And maybe if like 1 or 2 people want to chime in, raise their hands. What are some thoughts? Anna, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, I've known a lot of great movement journalists who wanted to become journalists because they didn't see their stories written about in a way that actually felt genuine or true to what was happening in their communities.
Yeah, definitely. Chelsea, what do you think?
I was going to say to tell stories that others aren't.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is good to keep in mind that like a lot of journalists probably share a lot of our values. They care about their communities. They want to make sure that the right stories get told. They want to make sure truth is seen and heard and out there. So it's like a lot of them, again, like are on our side and want to do this right. Yvette says in the chat to inform the community. Gary says service. And exactly, like they care, they want to do the right thing. They're just using their specific tool in a specific way. So again, we're in the kind of the heads of the journalists. It's also good to think about what are some of the constraints that they have to work with. One, time. They always have, limited time. They're always working on a deadline. They have too much going on. So timeliness is really key for them. They don't have a lot of time and they're working on a deadline. And they're always thinking of what is today's story, which is really key. 2, they're usually at the mercy of their editors. Newspapers have a main editor who really makes a lot of the decisions about what stories get covered and what stories don't get covered. So, they may have a story that they want to do, but then they'll have to run it by their editors. So, they have to be able to convince someone else that this story matters, and that's important. They have to really think about what is the news, and not just what is an issue. So they always kind of need that hook, like, why is this a news story? And we'll talk about this actually just in a second, like what makes a news story. Often they have a short amount of space or time. Again, thinking about space is, not every journalist has the liberty of writing a 3,000 word investigative piece on an issue. Maybe it'll only be 300 words that are going to, fit into a specific section of the paper. So, they really have sometimes are really limited by how much they can write. For a lot of journalists, they're covering many issues. So, even if someone is the environment reporter for a paper, they're going to be getting tons of pitches, tons of press releases, lots of issues coming their way that they're having to sort through. So you want to make sure that you can speak to them in a way that they're like, oh, this really stands out to me. They also have to really think about their audience. So kind of each paper has a specific audience that they're thinking towards, whether it's, geographic based, like, hey, we're a paper for Miami. So they have to really think about, who is the audience of their paper and is this something that would really interest them? So this is something that they're thinking about. Welcome everyone who's just joining. So glad you could join. Just FYI, right now in the presentation, we're getting in the heads of journalists and thinking about what they're looking for. So they do have some constraints. So they have to keep in mind their audience. And then also journalists have very few resources. Like, honestly, journalists do not get paid that much anymore, especially for photo and video. They often don't have the budget to cover that. They're also, a lot of things are out of pocket. So they're doing a lot of things also on the shoestring budget, which is really important to think about. And then they also have to be aware of being neutral, which, you know, is always an issue when they're working on things that are more considered more issues. Thank you, Anna, for dropping that journalist in the chat, because they have to, journalism is about telling the truth, and with that comes a certain expectations for neutrality. So these are, again, like some of the things that they really have to be thinking about. And so when you're trying to get the journalist's attention, it's really important to keep these things in mind so that you know how to work with them in a way that is successful. Okay, so what makes a good news story? What are they really looking for? Just give me a second. A news story has, you know, some of these things, some new facts or statistics. So maybe your organization did a big research study that looked at pollution rates. So you have some really new facts. That's a good news story. Something new being said by someone interesting. So again, maybe a local council person came out in support of your resolution. That's a news story. There's a new event, stunt, or action. So if you're having a march, rally, protest, that is a specific event. And that's, again, a news story. Having, especially with stunts and actions, having good visuals also really, really helps. That's something to think about. I'll just give one quick example. I used to work with some really great climate activists in Asia, and there was going to be a big World Bank meeting in the Philippines. And so they decided to do a big stunt where they were trying to get Japan to stop funding coal. And so because Japan was the target, they did this big stunt dressed up as inflatable Pikachus. Anyway, but it was super visual, and like they had these banners and signs, and they got so much press attention, and like photos of like Pikachu holding like anti-Japan and coal banners basically were in all the major papers because it was super visual and had that really great element. And people were like, I want a photo of Pikachu's protesting at the World Bank. So yeah, like having those visual elements doesn't have to be as gimmicky as Pikachu's, but those sorts of things, the visuals matter. What else is news? A story that hasn't been told before. So, you know, an investigative piece, something that has not been discussed, something new and exciting. Also personal testimonies, things that are really surprising, shocking, interesting. One of the groups that Solutions Project works with is West Street Recovery, and they do really incredible community organizing in Houston. And so it was just the 5th anniversary of Hurricane Harvey that came through. And so we pitched to several papers some really powerful personal stories about people's recovery in the past 5 years and what the government hasn't been doing. And some like really shocking facts about the lack and like basically the racism of the government in regards to hurricane recovery. And because it was also hooked to a specific event of the 5th anniversary, that's when we were also able to really get those personal testimonies and get news outlets interested. Getting a personal testimony is not always the easiest. Again, you usually have to have, again, some like hook to it. And what also makes a good hook? A twist on a trending story. So, you know, so for example, if there's something that I was talking about, what is the twist on it? What is a new interesting perspective? A good hook can also be localized and national story. So for example, there was just the big national climate bill, and the Inflation Reduction Act just passed. So if you wanted to pitch a story about, you know, what does that mean for your community and your area, that would probably be more interesting to a journalist because, you know, this is a big national story. what does it mean for our community? Or you could nationalize a local story. So why does what's happening in your community matter on like a much bigger level? So these are just like a few things you really want to make sure that, again, you have that hook, that it is timely, that it is tied to something, that it is new. And that's really key. Here are some things that are not new, that don't constitute news in and of themselves. So just things you think are important. You know, we want people to know X. If it's not tied to a big event or a moment or a new thing, doesn't count. Your own thoughts and feelings, unless it's an op-ed or a letter to an editor, and we'll discuss those later. But again, even those have to have a hook to them. Old statistics that you've only just found out about. So, you know, if there's an old study about something, but you really want to highlight it again, if it's an old report, but it's not tied to anything new, that's not gonna get interest. An older event, maybe you held an action last month, but you forgot to tell anyone about it. It's not gonna hold up now for if you're pitching. A story that's already been covered, but you don't really have like a new angle on it. And again, they're always really thinking about what is the new angle, what hasn't been told, what is happening right now. If they've already done, 5 stories on a topic and yours just feels too similar, then that's not gonna work either. And then again, personal testimonies that are similar to other stories that have been covered before. So those are the sorts of things that they're just like, you know what, we're not gonna, we've already done that, we're not too interested. Again, what you want to do is spark the attention of the journalist and make sure that this is new, this is timely, it's tied to what everyone's talking about, and really gets people excited. So we're just going to pause there. Any quick questions or anything that anyone wants to add here, maybe from your own experience of what gets journalists excited, or doesn't get them excited? Anyone have anything that they want to share? Open up space for that. Okay. If not, we're just going to launch into this quick exercise of you starting to craft your own pitch. Now, a pitch is basically your correspondence with the journalist where you are trying to get them excited about your story. So we are going to take, we're going to take 5 minutes. And again, this is just like a short and sweet exercise for y'all to do. But think about maybe an upcoming campaign, event that your organization is having, or maybe a story that you definitely want to get covered in the press, maybe now or even down the line. Just think about kind of the situation with your organization that you're working on. And I want you to write 3 sentences, just 3 sentences that how can you get a journalist excited about the story in 3 sentences and why they should write about it. Does that sound good?
All right, so I wanted to leave some space for us to kind of try that ourselves. So you can do something related to Kepra or your personal work, but with the information that was given in the previous 3 slides, did you guys want to try to craft a pitch?
Okay.
And
3 sentences.
yeah. I'll go back to the part in the slides where she spoke about what is pitch worthy, so you can look at those.
Oh, it came back. Jasmine. Yeah, it came. There we go. Okay.
These are the things that are not. I'm going to go to the things that are. Here we go, right here. I would set a quick timer. I'll try it out.
So Jasmine, we're trying to make a little paragraph about something new being said. No, a new event, a story that hasn't been told before.
Yeah, so basically based off of like you can use the Kepra, any Kepra initiatives that we have, for example, or any of
OVC
Yeah.
is new.
yeah, or any of your personal works, and you're gonna just try to construct a pitch. Now, as you're constructing this pitch, you can use the things that are listed on this slide here. So what are some facts that you can use to make OVC seem important to a journalist? Are there some statistics or facts that can make people feel passionate about, Kepra owning 17 acres of land?
Mhm.
Is there are you guys doing something new or something interesting that
Mm.
other people that own that much land are doing?
Mhm.
I don't think that OVC will fall under the stunt or action, but the new event part could work for that. Because are you going to be doing something new that other farmers aren't doing? Are you going to be doing something new that other nonprofits in the city aren't doing with this land? And that follows under the next one, like a story that hasn't been told before, or a testimonial that could be moving, shocking, or surprising. So,
But then for me, I was thinking that it's just the fact that something new not being said, but a story hasn't been told before.
yeah.
And that's what be this new event.
That's exactly what I'm doing. Miss Fair's always 3 steps ahead of all of us.
Yeah. So,
Two words that are key in what I'm writing. Kepler provides a voice and an alternative view of the issues that face our community.
Mhm. Oh, I like that. I like that. And I was going to put in my pitch that community organization with an eye to community engagement has embarked upon a 17-acre property to see these things come true. And then in parentheses, I have these as what does the community like? What would the community like to see? So the whole idea is the newness is what would the community like to see before we start putting in programs. And so that was the new piece for me.
Yeah, and then something that I latched onto was the first bullet point of new facts or statistics. Well, I guess they're not new. I'm actually pulling from something that was listed in 2021, but Capra's joins. Whoop, boom, that was a timer. So I'll just tell you what I latched on to. But Black farmers in general only account for 1.4% of farmers in the U.S. right now. So Kepra having this farmland and being able to give Black and brown producers the ability to cultivate land and profit off of produce is going to be something that is unique. So
I like that profit off of produce.
yeah, so that was mine.
The peas.
Yeah. So and I think that's important because if we just we think about that 1.4% is not a lot.
But you know, when you say profit off of produce, just like resources is more than one thing. So to profit off of produce is to produce produce, to share is to produce produce, to have a market share for ourselves and others to come and offer their produce to the community for money, for
relationships.
But it is it's a resource that the community can use. Some people can come and buy it. Some people can come and share it because they have more tomatoes in their plot than they thought. Some people can come in, but I like that it's produce for profit, and produce for profit, and the profit is a variety of resources, and therein is this special community engagement and engaging thought on what that profit could be, more than money, because money is just a construct anyway. And the way they're trying to control inflation in this day and time, because they keep pumping out that money, we don't have a gold standard anymore, thanks to Mr. Nixon. And so, I mean, not to say that was a bad thing.
What are you talking about? I'm with you, man.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but if you can only live by money that you have, then you'll always be poor, because you can never have enough. And rich people can show you that. They still trying to suck it up from the masses that what we have. So if money is your only source of a resource, you spend a lot of time trying to accumulate it. So produce for profit. I like that.
I think that could be another angle to it as well. I mean, obviously, all of us in this meeting are members of Kepra, and we've been exposed to the jargon. A lot of us have lived through these philosophies before even having the names prior to joining Kepra, and that's how we found this place. We lived in community before, and the community found us here. So that could be another angle, is just like exposing people to the idea of flexible resources and and building wealth that way through this garden. Especially,
I was in a meeting earlier.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Today,
I'm sorry, but especially with people seeing the fragility of capitalism right now. We're all exposed to it. If you're an adult and you have to pay for anything, we all experience inflation in some way. With our gas prices, housing, just everything is going up. So we're like, okay, maybe, and even through the federal dollars, we've seen a shift in what they're investing in as well. So, something we can latch on to. I'm sorry, GK, hop in there.
Yeah, on a practical note, I deal with the financial end of things a little bit here at Kepra, and and you already know this, that the entrepreneurs in the food space, the ones that are coming in new, they willingly sacrifice profit in order to bring their product, their produce into the marketplace. Because Ms. Fair mentioned profit, if even the new ones are doing that, even some of the ones that have been in there a while and are more organized, they sacrifice a lot to do what they do on the scale that they do it here in town. I just ate a cucumber in a salad this week that came out of some of the programs that Kep was a part of. And I know, I was part of there was awarded a grant to people. My first week with Kepra, I was in a meeting with my old boss and was with M on a program where we voted on a grant, and it got real. I didn't have much uptime. The first few days it got real.
Yeah, I want to say, not this last time that I catered Cafe Creative, but the time before, I made some vegan gumbo, and I went to. Well, actually, I didn't even go. I had someone go to the garden because Lakaya had extended, the produce, and she was like, "Whenever you need something, just go over there and grab it." And you're actually helping it by getting some of the stuff so it can grow more. So I used some bell peppers from the garden in order to make my gumbo. And not only does it taste good to have something that is like pesticide free, but it tastes good because it's grown with love and it's grown out of community. So yes. And I know what it is like to try to invest a little bit more into the food that you produce because you want it to taste better. But it's great that we have the resource of Kepra to pull. What was your pitch? I'm excited to hear about it.
My pitch.
Go ahead, guys. I'm gonna grab my coffee.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you could go ahead and fall into it, and then GK, when she finishes up and you get back with your coffee, I'd love to hear yours as well.
Oh, okay. I had said that my pitch it was about a new event, and so it was about Octavia's Visionary Campus. What in the world? And it was him just came over here making jokes. You have to do something about this. But it was about the new event was Octavia's Visionary Campus has the 17-acre farm, 100-year-old farm on the south side now has a community organization, an organization that has community uplift as a focus, and will be moving into introducing itself to the community, to work with the community, and through the community, the 17 acres will be a part of the community. And I think what makes it a new event is that it's not about Kepra moving into the area and saying, this is what we're going to do for you. It's about working with and through the community to make it a part of the community. So what does the community need? How can the 17 acres now be a part of the benefit to the community? So I think that's what makes it a new event, that it's not about someone coming in saying, this is what we're going to do for you. It's about the newness, is someone coming in saying, we now own the 17 acres. It's a part of the community, and let's build on what will happen here together. So that's this press release newness that that I would like to interject.
GK, are you ready to share yours?
I gotta unmute. Mine is just pretty much what you guys heard, but I'll elaborate a little bit. You might remember that earlier I mentioned that I had a not great experience with some music people, and that was one of several recently here in the city. but I'll put a good slant on that. But basically, it came down to this: Kepra KI provides a voice and an alternative view of the issues that concern our neighborhoods and our city. And I would, I guess I hate to say it this way, but my next target, I want to. I want to rub shoulders and talk a little bit with the people at Clio's on MLK and not propose anything, but just get to know them a little bit better. We drove past there last night on the way back from the studio, and that has been on my bucket list since I've worked with KI and Clio's Open, because they're part of the Food Justice Initiative. Now, M knows them, but we have not reached out to them previously on a deeper level. I'm sure Mimi knows them as well. So I have some ideas for that I would like, because they're a music venue as well. But I have this as an overview because it overlaps into different areas of KI, and I can elaborate it on it in the direction that we take it.
Well, I really enjoyed how it sounded. I really enjoyed the words that you used in order to make it better. All right, so let's keep going with it.
Bubble, but I'm going to try and break this down a bit more and talk about all these different media materials and strategies. When do you use them? Like, when do you turn to these, and what does that kind of timeline look like? And hopefully this will help you then understand, when you're thinking about your to-do list, your bag, lots of different tools, tactics. What I would just include there, Tran, is like, are there any key updates with the project? Of like an event start.
Sorry, you guys, I'm trying to find the spot.
So yeah, it's always your pitch, basically. Okay, so we're gonna keep on rolling. So one of the things that's tricky with doing comms work is there's lots of different tools, tactics, strategies that you need. Sometimes it feels like the journalism world is its own little bubble, but I'm going to try and break this down a bit more and talk about all these different media materials and strategies. When do you use them? Like, when do you turn to these, and what does that kind of timeline look like? And hopefully this will help you then understand, when you're thinking about your to-do list, your bag of tools, what to really like pull on and when. Just give me just a second, need another glass of water. Still recovering from this bad cold. So let's talk about media materials around events, especially. This is really good for, campaign launches, actions, rally, major events. This is kind of a sequence that you will maybe want to follow. First, we have our media advisory. So a media advisory is like an invitation. You are inviting the press to come to something, letting them know it is happening, letting them know when and where and what it's all about. It is the invitation. It is saying, hey, we are having this march on this date. Here's why it matters. We would love for you to come. And it's an invitation. So you send it ahead of time. And then you have your press release. Now, the press release is much more in-depth than a media advisory. You want to think about what would be your ideal article about your event. And basically, you are trying to give the journalists as much information as possible so they can just like pull from your press release and put together a story really easily. Sometimes they even publish your press releases word from word, but it's really giving as much information to a journalist as possible about the event itself. It can be sent out before the event. Usually it's sent out right afterwards. So that, you know, you can say, hey, we had 20,000 people attend this march and rally. This is why it was such a big deal. So it's sent out right afterwards. What's also really helpful with the press release, to have quotes, to make sure you have really great, strong quotes from the spokespeople. And also, if you can, including any links to photos and images, that really helps too. If you're having a really big event and you have a bunch of press interest already, a press conference is a good way to go. That way you can answer a lot of questions all at the same time. Your spokespeople can talk to a lot of people. It's a good place to, you know, bring everyone together. But I'll just say this, press conferences are so much work to put together. And you never want to do a press conference and not have any press show up. So my train of thought is only do a press conference if it's something that you're like, we already have a lot of interest and attention. We're definitely going to get a whole bunch of journalists there. It's really something where it's like, you're already a hot topic. That's when you really want to lean into a press conference. Otherwise, it's a lot of work to organize if you don't have a bunch of journalists there to show up. But it can also be a really great tool. And a press conference does not have to only be tied to an action. I will say this, I remember last year with Hurricane Ida when it hit Louisiana, you know, a lot of our groups that we worked with there were getting a ton of questions from journalists. And so they said, hey, can you help us put together a press conference so we can talk to these journalists all at once who have questions about, you know, what's going on with hurricane recovery. So we did a Zoom press conference, invited a bunch of journalists there. And so that's like another way where, again, it's like if you're already getting a bunch of questions and attention, press conference is a great way to just bring everyone together. But usually, unless you don't have a lot of attention, just a really solid press release will be great in and of itself. And then after a press release, follow-up is really, really key. And I actually have this more detailed guide because I wish we could have a whole training on media advisories and press releases. So let me get this link for y'all and I'll share it again afterwards. But this is, 1 second. Okay, I just dropped in the chat. Let me know if that works for y'all or if I need to change the settings. But this is a guide. It walks through, again, what should be in your media advisory, everything that should be in your press release. It also has this timeline for, again, like if you have an event, here's your flow, here's your timeline of what you need to do to make sure coverage, everything from researching journalists, prepping the press release, sending the media advisory. This timeline should be super helpful to help you really think about when you need to get all these different elements out the door and what you need to do. So hopefully this is super helpful. I also have some templates here for a media advisory and a sample press release as well. And then there's also some more guides and tips and trainings in here. So we'll send this around afterwards. Again, I wish I had time to cover this all more, but hopefully this guide will be really useful so that you have, you know, those templates and those guides whenever you need to about how you can craft these yourself. Okay, back to this. So that's a rough arc if you're having an event interaction. And next thing I want to think about is responding to situations. Often something will come up in the news or a story And you want to make sure that the perspectives of your organization gets heard in this coverage. You know, Tran just gave an example of the Inflation Reduction Act. Again, thinking about what are the stories, what are the hot topics, what needs to be responded to. A lot of comms work is just responding to situations as well. So here's a couple tools. An op-ed. An op-ed is good for response, but it is also really useful to just when you need to make sure that your position, a topic, is really clear. And an op-ed is usually anywhere between 800 to 1,000 words. When an op-ed refers to, it means the opposite of the editorial page. So in the old days of newspapers, every newspaper has their editorial page of their staff giving their opinions on topics. And then opposite of that is the op-ed page. So those are people from, you know, the community and elsewhere and their opinions on topics. So op-eds can be, it's an opinion piece, it's your opinion, it's your position. You have a much better control of your voice and your message. So it's a great way to say, hey, here's our position and here's what we think. It still needs a news hook to it. So it has to be tied to something that's timely, that's going on, that people are thinking about, because you still have to convince the newspaper to run it. You know, that's the trick. You have to convince the newspaper. They're like, yes, this is tied to something that people are talking about. This is a position that matters, that we want to hear from in our community. And it's really good. So usually what you do is you draft your op-ed, and then you reach out to different editors. Different newspapers have different lengths, but it's 800 to 1,000 words roughly. An op-ed is kind of like writing poetry, and you have to say a lot in a very short amount of space. You do not have a lot of space, but you can kind of craft it and then reach out to different editor teams and see if any of them are interested in this op-ed. But again, you're going to have to think about your pitch. How do you get them excited that your voice needs to be heard and that this is timely? So that's the op-ed. Next is a letter to the editor. So say something big happened in your community and you want to make sure, again, you want to respond and get your story out there. Maybe the newspaper reported on it. A letter to the editor is a good way to just make sure that your response, your rebuttal, is basically heard. It's usually about 300 words. Usually it is responding to, you have to have a specific article or column, something that the paper already reported on, and you're responding to that. So going to Gary's example, maybe your paper responded on one of those recent lawsuits that happened, but they did not cover things correctly. And you got to let them know, hey, this is what you actually need to know about that lawsuit. Then you can draft a letter to the editor, send it to the newspaper and saying, hey, here's our perspective on this topic. Here's something that you missed that needs to be heard. And be really clear on that. And it really helps to make sure, like when you're pitching that, to have kind of your authority, like what's your position in the community? Why do you know about this topic? Who you are? You're not just anyone, you know what you're talking about. This article really, missed something, it needs to be corrected. And so that's a good tool and tactic, short, sweet, direct response to get something out there. And then thirdly, another really great tool is a media statement. And the sole purpose of a media statement is for you to get your quote out there so that your side of the story can be heard. So another example, President Biden, approving new leases for oil and gas exploration in the Gulf of Mexico. There was a big announcement about that. a bunch of reporters are going to be writing about that topic, and you want to make sure that, your quote from your organization gets used by the journalists when they write their stories. So you craft a media statement. And I'll say this, like, in the follow-up documents, I'll also send around a template for a media statement as well. So you have that as a template as well. So the media statement, you just have like what's going on, the quote, from who's it from, and then you send it out to the journalists. So hopefully when they're writing their story on this big topic, they're like, you know what, I want to make sure that this voice is heard, and they'll already have a quote from your organization to be able to pull and drop into their story. Having that, it's quick, it's a response, it's timely, you're responding to something, but it can be a really big way that you can make sure that your voice is heard when reporters are writing about a topic.
Thelma, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the media statement is also something that's public.
All right, so I wanted to pause because just to get some thoughts about what we just heard there. Do you guys have any thoughts about what you heard there? And then I can give mine.
Well, can I say something from previous in the video before we get to this? I felt that the journalistic viewpoint of the lady presenting the material was a couple of steps higher than what I'm seeing in CNN and the news break things that are going on, in the social media right now. My personal feeling is that her integrity personally and her viewpoint of what a journalist is, ideally, is a lot more than what journalists are. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm saying that they're so focused in current events on their emotions that they overlook the facts. You noticed I chimed in when Ms. Pear made a comment about our monetary system. Faith, facts, feelings, in that order.
Well,
But
I mean, in this case, because this whole training is about you building your own relationships with the media and you kind of taking some initiative there. So if you feel like there are some journalists that are facetious or more driven on how they can make profit off of what they say, then you can be intentional about seeking out the people that you feel like are truthful in the stories that they share.
well, it's a new world, Jasmine. I mean,
yeah, I know, I know that just like in discussion with M. Paulette and some other people that I've spoken to on the porch, they prefer Democracy Now! As a news source. If you are able to get online and use LinkedIn or find those journalists' names and try to build a relationship with them. The internet gives you that ability to do those things that you couldn't have done in the past. And maybe they could tell your story for you. Or you could just look, try to search locally. What newspaper?
that's the ones local journalists.
Yeah. What local journalists do you agree with, or do you feel like give a more level-headed approach to the stories that they tell? And then what were you going to say about the slide that we were on now?
Well, I'm going to preface it with, honestly, I'm just going to be real honest. This is new to me. I had a hard enough time just putting up a music website. I did Facebook, and I don't like me. I've been on Facebook many times, but other than a personal level, I have not enjoyed it because of a lot of things. I did it in the years past to satisfy my bookers so they wouldn't drop me. And I'm being real honest with you. I think that I will deal better, like this thing with the op-ed. I made some notes here. Op-ed, 80 words, letter to the editor, 300 words, media statement, quick, timely, quotes from you, facts that can be attributed to you. I deal better in that realm than I do with the everything being emotionally charged and not really pertaining to the community that we serve, so we can better serve them.
Well, I mean, as long as you're on the porch, I have relationships within Kepra. We do have relationships with the Indianapolis Recorder, where you can put a blog post if you feel like there's something important. And then we do also have journalists that come around the porch. And like I said, if you build a relationship with them and you feel like they're unbiased and you wanna, or you feel like they could give you the ability to get your op-ed off, because generally you'll need to get it through one of these publications, then definitely move forward. I love to read it. And then any other thoughts from either of you? And then I'll give you guys my thoughts.
Your thoughts.
All right, cool. So the first thing that I want to talk about, she gave the template for the media advisory, and I'll be sure to get that so that I can put it in Google Drive so that other people can look over it as we move forward in our communications. And so again, like KI does already have some relationships established with journalists within the city. And most of the time, from what I've been told, they reach out to us to tell stories. But we have the opportunity now to be more intentional and highlight new and influential stories that we have going on, like with our Kepra Integrated Fund or our purchase of Octavia's Visionary Campus. And I feel like with our intention to get the community more involved with Octavia's Visionary Campus, we, after we construct maybe a survey or we set up a mumbo jumbo, we could use the media to get the community involved in those conversations as they continue to build out the purpose for the campus. And then moving forward, you know, again, op-eds are more opinionated pieces focusing on what you think is important. And then with the letter to the editor, I know that I'd heard about a story being written about KI that some people within the organization didn't necessarily agree with. That'll be the point where you can write a letter to the editor and give your perspective, maybe denounce some of the thoughts that were spoken within that paper or within that article, and just give your perspective based on your authority of being a part of KI. And then the media statement could just be something like if you saw something represented in the news that you felt didn't align with community's perspective, give your quote. And then the last thing that I want to say before we continue is that everybody's story is important. And I think that I'll be saying that as we continue on with these trainings. Everybody's story is important. You know, I think we place value on other stories because they were told, but you have to consider yourself as that person too. What story do you have to tell? What's important to you and what do you want to get out? And the right people will latch on to your perspective. All right, I'm muting again. And we're going to hear this person ask a question. So hopefully you find something in there.
Can't hear.
They're writing. Yeah. So, yeah. And again, like a recent example, Inflation Reduction Act, so much coverage around there. Having media statements from different, especially frontline organizations, communities impacted from it. Newspapers wanted to hear what groups had to say. And so, you know, if you sent them a media statement, hey, here's a quote that you can use, here's our response to what's going on, then they might choose to then take your quote and then include it in their article. And so that's a really great way.
Examples of media statements on the.
There are great examples. And then I'm gonna send some of those templates. So after the training, I'll have the media advisory and press release templates, and I'll also do a media statement template as well, so that you guys will have that. So you know exactly like, here's what needs to be in all of these different materials. We don't have the time to go into everything again. I wish we could, but I will send around those templates afterwards. Any other questions? But again, it kind of comes down to like knowing when to pull these different threads, and it kind of depends on your own capacity. It depends on what you're responding to, what you want to get covered. But this is good for, if you were responding to a situation, versus this kind of workflow if you are yourself having an event or an action. Yeah, Gary, you have a question? Oh, you're on mute, Gary, sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. So we live in an area that is like very industrial friendly and oil and gas friendly. And, you know, a lot of times if we put out a press release or something, if it's like for a giveaway or a turkey drive, the media will cover it. But if it's like something about, you know, really, you know, facts related to industry or even some of the court battles, they shy away from that because, it's corruption essentially. So what are some things we can do to overcome some of those challenges? We have done received national media, but obviously, it's different than receiving media coverage in your community.
Oh, that's a great question. I think what you said about national press helps. So go to anyone who's not corrupt. And then the other thing is build relationships. And so maybe it's just about finding the right reporter, the right journalist at that paper who maybe isn't as corrupt. And that relationship building can really make a big difference.
Makes sense.
And this is why also social media matters and should go hand in hand with comms, because if you're facing those barriers with the press side of it, then put out some social media exposing that corruption. At least with social media, you can make sure your side of the story is heard. So that's always great. But if, sometimes it's just about also finding the right reporter and journalist. And I might actually just skip ahead real quick to come back to this one to make sure we cover it, because I think our interpreters have to jump off in a bit. And again, apologies, y'all. I'm still recovering from this cold, so thank you for your patience with my coughing. But okay, so here's some like possible next steps. If you're like, I am ready to build up the press work of my organization, here are some like 3 things that you can do that'll make a big difference. Oh. Okay, my headphones just died. Can y'all still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Y'all, it is Mercury in retrograde right now, and it is
Multiple planets. We can hear you.
It is messing with all my tech. Okay, so building a media list. A media list is your list of who are the journalists that you want to be in touch with. So, thinking about your local papers, who is who are the different reporters at different papers who are covering different beats, building your list of who you want to be in touch with. And then even then you can even have notes in there like, I don't know this person, I want to build a relationship with them. But having that media list, and then what you do is then once you do have a media advisory, press release, media statement, then you already have a list of emails of people that you can send your materials to, because that's the other part of building these media materials. You got to send them to someone. So building your media list, who are the journalists that you want to work with, that's really key. There's lots of fancy tools to be able to find this, but LinkedIn and Twitter are also really great ways to find journalists that you want to work with. And even just starting with a simple spreadsheet, mapping that out, doing that research, that's a really just like simple way to start building that media list. And then connected with that is actually point
30 to-
three, which is building those relationships. You
Seven,
actually do not
nine.
have to wait for a campaign or a moment before you reach out to the journalists. You can build that relationship ahead of time. So you could even, Tran, let's say, for example, Tran works with Uprose in Brooklyn. If you have, five journalists in Brooklyn that you want to build a relationship with them, you could email them now and say, hey, I just started working with Uprose. This is who Uprose is. I would love to have a short meeting or conversation to tell you about our work. That's totally fine. Because again, remember the values of journalists. They care about their communities. They want to cover what's going on. So they want to know who are the organizations who are doing the work. So, if you have journalists that you want to reach out to, email them. Say, hey, can we have a quick conversation and I can tell you about the great work of my organization. They would love that. A lot of them, they want to know who's doing what. And then, so that's you kind of building those relationships, building those media lists. Like I said to Gary, find the journalists who are not corrupt and build those relationships with them. That really helps. And if they already know you, then once you send them those press releases, they're more likely to write about your story. Another really good thing to do is spokespeople trainings. So who at your organization is going to be the one who's going to do interviews with the press? Press interviews can actually be intimidating and not always the easiest thing. This is a whole nother training, but there's really great tools, resources, really amazing organizations who do spokespeople trainings, but training up, a select group of people at your organization who know how to talk with the press, who really good at getting your messaging across, training them up so that they know how to talk to the press. Planning those trainings can be really great. So yeah, as you're thinking about your org's media work over the next while, maybe say, hey, in 2023, we want to do a spokespeople training. We want to train that up, train everyone so that they know how to talk with the press. That could be a great thing to put on your potential calendar. So those are just, some other good next steps to start thinking of to really get those gears going. So, apologies. I think our interpreters need to leave if you need to, and that's fine. What I want to move us to go back to actually real quick is to have a discussion actually and dive into some media materials and just talk about that. So what we're going to do, I have here, I'm going to share with y'all, this is the press release that we sent out for Communicating Our Power. So when we did the public announcement about Communicating Our Power back in April, we did a press release because we wanted stories about it. We specifically were thinking about outlets that write about philanthropy and that write about, climate justice. There's a couple key magazines that write about philanthropy and organizations in the nonprofit world. So that's what we really pitched to. But I'm going to share this press release around, and then we're just going to do some breakout rooms. I want you all to dissect this press release. Hang on a second. Okay. Let me just go over it real quick. So this is our press release, and we sent it out actually through, there's a service, there's a couple services actually, where if you don't already have a media list, you can pay money and they'll send out your press release to a bunch of media. So that's another way to get your story out there, that if you're not going to send it to a targeted press list. So we wanted a big reach, so we sent it out through this PR Newswire. So again, you can see we have a title, date, this subline, location and date, We have some really great quotes. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. Hopefully you're able to have like some conversations there. But what were some of your thoughts? Maybe like 2-3 people, what came up? Any thoughts on like takeaways or reflections looking at the comma press release? Latoya, yeah, you want to start off?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. We actually didn't remember all of the questions that you asked, but I did see that you asked about what is the hook. And I thought that the header was dynamic in the way that it spoke about the amount of the investment into the communications capacity. I think that dollar amount would draw anyone in, like, wait a minute, $10 million invested into what? So I think that was a great header.
Yeah, it's like you want to grab people with the money, especially if we're thinking about our audience is philanthropy and nonprofit journalists. They are drawn in by the money and anything that's new. So it's like a new program. Yeah, definitely. Any other kind of thoughts, reactions about the press release? Tran?
Yeah, in our group, we talked about the length of it and how, a lot of places we've been kind of taught or told to really get to the point and do kind of like the who, what, when, where, how. But that was something we noticed for this one. It was a lot longer, very thorough, of course, to answer all the questions. And we wonder if it's because it's kind of on like the landing page and that you can have kind of multiple kind of press release. We have one that's like, can sit on your like website or so or landing page, and then other shorter ones. And you're going to go directly to like news outlet or certain other places.
Great question. It is a long press release. It is definitely a long one. Usually press releases should be a page long, I would say. But again, it's important to think about, this is kind of, you're writing an ideal article. So you're kind of doing a lot of the writing for the journalists. So sometimes it's okay to have a longer press release, especially if you're doing, what's what I'm looking for? Like work with a lot of organizations. So with this one, we wanted to make sure.
All right, I'll stop it here. And then I just wanted to talk really quickly about different ways that we can go about how we interact with journalists as KEPRA. So as we start to be more intentional about the stories that we share and the relationships that we build with journalists, like I mentioned our KIF fund and I mentioned Octavia's Visionary Campus as some stories that we can be intentional about getting out right now. Like she said in the just a few minutes ago in this conversation, that you want to be intentional about the people that you reach out to. The website that she highlighted in order to get some media responses was called Newswire, and you can post whatever op-ed or press release that you have on there, and then publications can take that and then build on it. But you also want to be intentional if you are doing it in a more controlled way versus just putting it onto that website. Consider some publications that align with the work that we do. So I wrote down two, one for the KIF Fund and one for Octavia's Visionary Campus. So for the farming aspect, if we do go that route with the 17 acres, Progressive Farmer is one of the publications that has the most coverage for farmers. And it is based in Alabama. It has about 500,000 subscribers to it with their audience. And then another one for entrepreneurship specifically. We cater right now, from what I've seen and what I've been a part of as a former Alchemy participant, in that space, we cater to more Black and Brown entrepreneurs. So for that and the KIF Fund, Black Enterprise is a very prominent news source that we could reach out to get those type of stories out. But we want to,
What would be the purpose of the national reach out?
Yeah,
Yes.
so how I could feel this being more purposeful, I know that our goal is to assist community. And
Uh-huh.
and more recently, we've been getting more funders who have helped fund some of our ideas to help, our community. And if we want to get more free dollars, we want to get more donations. The more people who know about us could potentially help with that. And that would be one of the reasons why we could reach out to bigger publications to get our stories out.
Yeah. Because see, I was thinking that we would do press releases and if indeed we did something like that, to speak to the community about come to an event, or we're looking for your input, and it would be the local newspapers like not the Beach Grove, but the
No, I know what you're saying.
the South Side Press or whatever it's called, the Garfield newsletter, the big churches in the area. So when I was thinking about press releases and those like Tom Healy is the reporter and editor for Midtown.
Mhm.
And Midtown specifically speaks to things going on. In fact, he did a really, really nice piece on the cooperative conference we got coming up on October 28th and 29th. And so when I was thinking about press releases, I wasn't even thinking about citywide since we are reaching out. That's why I'm glad I'm talking to you guys. I was thinking about us being in the community, and where would the community get their news? Of course, it would be from the city newspaper, but many of them would read those little papers that are produced in the community by the community. So I was thinking about those more than I was thinking even the citywide newspaper. And but when you said the national paper, just to let people know what a small community, what a not-for-profit in one section of one part of the city has decided to spread their wings and try to include more of the community inside of their project. And so that would be almost like a template to other organizations in other parts of the United States and say, hey, we that's what we're trying to do. We just got this acre land and we want to start community gardens, and let's call them up and see what they're doing. So I nationally how it could be a benefit.
Yeah, it can grow our community. It can grow our community. We get more flexible resources that way. But then we also can help build up another person, which I know is another important part of KEPRA, to educate. Locally, we can latch on to, especially as we try to get more community involved on Pavia's Visionary Campus and even like our KID Fund, we can latch on to like Wish TV or Fox 59, the Indy Star, and seek out people there who could help push that story forward to get more community involvement. But when I consider, people around my age and how we receive news, we don't receive news traditionally. A lot of the people that I'm around specifically, we connect the news with the blues. Like, it's there to make us sad, we feel like.
Whoa, news with the blues now.
You get one story about a dog, like a happy dog, and then the rest is about murders. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of like good highlighted in the local news. So I know a lot of us will find news through the social medias that we're connected to. Through TikTok, we might see somebody speak on an article, or on Instagram. There's a lot of Black news sources on there that will speak to what's going on in the world. And I do have an example because I have a friend that works for an organization called Give Directly, where they basically take money from billionaires and then they create initiatives around it to give it to communities.
So
And
do they report those initiatives back to the bill? I mean, is it like they go and say, hey, you ought to be more active in the community, and then they get the dollars and put them on things, or?
oh, I'll tell you what they're doing. So, you know, like I'm sure you read like The Millionaire Next Door. So these people are trying to basically get some tax cuts. They're trying to keep as much money as possible. So they find ways to give money so they can keep money.
Yeah.
And the way that a lot of people have found out about it, because there was a specific initiative that they were doing in Atlanta, and I have some friends that are out there. They have this initiative where they were gifting, because the money is gifted so the people don't have to put it on their taxes, but they were gifting minority women $1,200 a month for a year. And I remember just hearing about it in conversation as my friends were talking about their work. But then I saw it highlighted on social media on a platform that I know myself and a lot of my friends look at on a regular basis.
They've been on YouTube.
Yeah,
Give
okay.
Directly. I've seen them on there.
Yeah, so they are in those cities probably on traditional news sources, but my friends that are in the city found out about it through social media. And catering to larger news sources or putting your money through social media marketing to get the youth involved might be a really good way. Or people who have distrust in the news, you could get your story out that way too.
That's a lot of people, young and old.
GK, did you have any follow-up questions before we close out?
Not at this time, except the press release thing. You know, that's something that I want to work on. I'm right in the middle of this with my music, and I'm going kicking and screaming. But I'm here because it's an opportunity for me to get my mind in the space that Kepper's in, and myself, and learn as I go along, and hopefully apply it to both areas. And as I said, there's an actual. I feel like I can use music as a bridge, and I want to. And that's my question. You know, just help me to learn so that I can do it in a professional and a prodigious manner.
For sure. So I'm in these trainings and I'm learning things that I've never learned before too. So I mean, I'm a youth who's been engulfed in the internet, and I know to share like information through my social media, but even still, I know that my voice could be amplified if I had these tools. So we'll be learning together. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to just email me and share them with me, and I'll try to connect with the CJA and see if they have any responses to the questions that you have, if I don't have the answer myself. Ms. Paulette, did you have any follow-up questions before we close out?
No, and I just want everybody to know that you give a fabulous social capital workshop through using almost 50 apps, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. There was another one that you gave in that very first workshop, and I'm looking forward to that one again. This one was wonderful, but the you know, I think I mentioned to you when you did that workshop that as I head on up to 90, I know I can sit on the sofa in the corner and pump out 5 posts a day about something Kepper's doing on every single platform, and let people know and be useful to the idea of community engagement. So I'm still looking for that workshop.
Yes.
Everybody know. Let's beg her for it, because she is a good one.
No, we could definitely do that when the next week then, and I'm sure that'd be useful to you too, GK, as you navigate all these different social media sites. And I do have a PowerPoint, and I that was one that I did personally. It's one that I took from the CJA, but I interpreted myself. So we can do that one next week, and then we can just continue on. As I get more trainings, we go through this together. We learn and grow together.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Jazz.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
All right, so I'm just gonna close out. Thank you all for joining me. And if you found anything that you felt was useful, of course, continue your own research. And then, like I said, you can reach out to me if you have some questions that are unanswered. If I can answer them myself, then I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And then it's beyond me or over my head, which a lot of things are, because I don't know everything. I'll reach out to the people that have the answers and get them back to you.
Right on.
All right. You guys.
Thank y'all. Have a good night.
Have a good night.